Nia Heidel, and I am the Vice President for Alliance Engagement Institutional Transformation here at CCA. So I get the great pleasure of working with our strategy directors to foster strong relationships with our Alliance members and really advancing the work and elevating the work that you're doing in your state. So it's a very, very exciting part of my job. And then I also work with our Gates Intermediaries for Scale project. The CCA team is so very excited to have this time to meet with you all. I can't even tell you how much time we spent over the last few weeks just preparing for this, waiting to see our friends and to reconnect with you all. As I mentioned, in an ordinary time, we would have been in Atlanta this year, hanging out and catching up on what's going on in the States and what's going on in your campuses. And because we couldn't do that, this is anything but ordinary times. We decided for this meeting to actually have it where it's set up as a meeting. So you can scroll through and see people and chat with people and catch up. But we want y'all to pay attention too. But, do all that stuff that we would normally do in a meeting and if we were in person. And so just a couple of housekeeping rules. Although we've been doing this for 8 months with this virtual space, just to make sure everybody knows, cameras are on, mics are off. So we have everyone muted just to cut down on noise and to make sure that we can move through our presentation. The chat function is open. The CCA team is there to answer questions throughout the presentation. So if something comes to your mind and you want to just, shoot it out there, please do, and someone will respond. At the end of our presentation, we have about 30 minutes where we can have a conversation about our relationship, what CCA can do for you, and what do you need from us, and just questions you'll be able to ask us questions. We have lots of new and exciting things we're going to share. So we want to have some time for you all to be able to ask us questions. So welcome to our CCA week, and our theme is with justice, equity, and justice for all. Just to reemphasize, and Yolanda, Dr. Watson-Steve will talk more about this in a little bit, but reaffirming our commitment to making sure that college completion is an option and possible for everyone who wants to participate in it. So we're going to begin with talking about the Alliance. So we are very proud that our Alliance has grown to 47 members. This is what our map looks like. We have regional representatives, we have states, and Puerto Rico and DC. So the Alliance is the strength of CCA. And so we value the partnerships that we have, the things that we learn, the resources that we can share. And this time that we're having with you is really to reconnect with you, to just share with you what CCA is doing and where we're going, and to find out ways that we can engage you. What we've done since we met last year in 2019 is we've reorganized CCA a little bit to be regionally focused. And so you'll see on this map that we have, next slide, that we have organized into 3 different regions. And you'll see our strategy directors. So look for your state, in whatever color you are, then look for the person on the right that matches, and that's your strategy director. And so we want you to find them, and they're going to find you, because we realize that having this approach could allow us to really focus on some regional concerns or things that are happening in the state, in that region, that will really benefit you. And these strategy directors, along with the strategies and the other initiatives that they are championing, they also are being very responsive to the needs of those particular regions. So we want you to reach out to Brandon, Melanie, and Nicholas when you have questions and you're doing great things in your states and you want CCA to be a part of it, or there's something that we can do. These are your people that will be able to support you in that work. Next slide. So for our time together today, it's very simple. We want to talk about who we are, what we do, and what's your role. So how do we support what you're doing? How do you fit into kind of what we're doing at CCA? And what opportunities do we have to partner and advance the movements that we have created together over the last 11 years? And to begin our conversation today, I'm going to hand off to Dr. Yolanda Watson-Spiva, who's the president of Complete College America, and she's going to share with you what CCA has been up to and what we're doing at this time. Dr. Watson-Spiva.
Thank you so much, Dr. Heidel. I appreciate it. First of all, welcome to everyone. I know I said some hellos earlier in the conversation, but I really do truly want to welcome you. I'm excited that we have this time together. I know these are very uncertain times and folks are traversing uncharted territory. So I thank you really for leaning into this conversation this morning. So when I think back, I joined CCA actually this month is my 2-year anniversary. So I attended the convening in Chicago was my first introduction to the Alliance in 2018. And when I think back to that, I do so with fond memories. And from that conversation to last year, 2019 in Phoenix, Arizona, I've continued to talk about the future of the college completion movement because this is a movement that we've been on together. And even before I was with CCA, I was a part of the movement toward thinking more fervently about what the 2025 goal of college completion looks like. And so, can you advance the slide, please? I think the interesting part is that, folks have been asking, well, what is CCA now and what's different, what's changed? I would say that it's really the same vision that Stan Jones had when he birthed CCA, when he envisioned CCA. That vision is still very much what's ahead of us. And I would just say there's a slightly different approach. And so please advance the slide. I think, as we think about where we've been, this slide does not represent the totality of who we are at CCA, but these are some of our partners in partnership also with you as our Alliance members. But, our field was born over this time, and we've had the growth of the student success agenda. And so a lot of us have now come together over this 11-year period to say that we're going to really put student success and completion at the forefront of what we're doing around how we address students. And so as we think about this now, and can you please advance the slide? And where we're going, I think we're really at an inflection point, right? So we now find ourselves in a moment that will forever shape higher education. So COVID-19, of course, is ubiquitous, and an increased focus on racial justice. I think these have provided an opportunity, and CCA was already a number of the things that we're looking at now. We've actually been there, but I think these two moments gave us an opportunity to really deepen and double down on our impact. And so we're taking a fresh look at what our impact looks like, and especially into the future. And so I would say that there was a CCA 1.0, which was Stan's vision, and it probably took us to about 2019 when we began to have a new perspective for how we need to move forward. And so we're calling it CCA 2.0, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But I think what you'll see is that essentially it's the same mission, same vision, but with a slightly different, more refined approach. At the end of the day, we're still about college success for every student. And we talk about that. We literally mean for every student. However, we're also saying we cannot have college success for every student without focusing on closing gaps for Black, Latinx, first gen, adult, and low income learners. And so we're looking at where the data tell us we should go, closing gaps there so that we can then have a greater impact for all students. And so we know that there have been these conversations, and we're going to have to now we've highlighted these concerns over the many decades. The only difference now is that higher education is now faced with the decision. And I'd say it's a decision because we're going to have to make a real, because of this inflection point, are we going to transform or fail? And we've seen during these last 8 months that many institutions have merged, closed, or had to really significantly change their focus. And so it really is about transformation or failure. And so we chose this theme with liberty and justice for all because we began thinking about, all of us remember being young kids, and even now when you go to a baseball game or whatever the event may be, and you recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and we say with liberty and justice for all. And we say it sort of effortlessly, but I think we forget that that's really an ideal. We aren't there yet. And so we thought about this in terms of our work, that really equity will lead us. If we operate more equitably, it will actually lead us toward that liberty that we're all seeking, which is freedom, inclusion, and a more unified America. And so as an organization, we've also been doing our own work related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we don't just turn the look out of a window. We also have a mirror that we've placed on ourselves as an organization and had to ask some hard questions about what does that mean for us. And so I know you all have seen these visuals or some iteration of these visuals, whether it's the kids looking over the fence. We chose this particular one because I think it highlights what inequality looks like. And you can see in that first slide, the tree is bent toward one person who can more easily have an apple fall on them. You also see in the next slide where, okay, both of them get helped. They get the same amount of, they both get a ladder, the same height of the ladder, but the tree is still bent. And then we see what equity looks like, where we give the other person a slightly higher ladder so they can reach the higher parts of the tree, but the tree is still bent. And I think at CCA, one of the things we've been talking about for some time is structural reform. We don't believe that these are the only models. We believe an alternative approach is possible. Next slide, please. And so we think that this slide actually more accurately reflects what CCA is focused on. We're actually focused on fixing the system to offer equal access to both tools and opportunities for students, as well as the faculty and administrators and leaders who serve them. And so this most resonates with us is this focus on justice, because this has been our mantra since the early days of CCA. And we have said for some time, we must fix the structures and campuses must be student ready, just as much as we say students must be college ready. And so I know some folks may say, well, we don't know what the political climate will be like after, the election is next week. And we agree that, we don't know what the future will hold. However, this has been the spirit of Complete College America, politics and anything else notwithstanding, right? And so we're going to continue to focus in a bipartisan way and also in a nonpartisan way on understanding the needs of our alliance. And we know the needs of our alliance members are varied. And so please know that we are here for you. It doesn't matter your political ideology. When we think about the value of higher education to advance our country and our democracy, I don't think that's a partisan issue. I think all of us can agree that it's important. And so no matter what happens on November 3rd, the work will remain focused on closing those achievement gaps with the groups that we talked about: Black, Latinx, Indigenous, rural, adult learners, first generation students, and poor students. And so if we, meaning the higher education sector, are going to be at the center of the economic recovery that we know COVID-19 demands right now, and be associated with this national discourse on economic recovery, then we're going to have to move to where the ball is going and not to where the ball is. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about more now. Next slide, please. Thank you. So CCA has spent extensive time listening and learning. And so I mentioned that we've turned the mirror inward and thinking about our own processes, our hiring, our contracting, our HR policies, our compensation, everything. But we've also been listening to you. And so just know that 2020 has been a productive year for CCA, COVID-19 and racial injustice notwithstanding. And here are just a sample of some of the activities that we've been engaged in, but also know that these have also provided really intense learnings for us to understand from our alliance members, from our CCA fellows, what you need, what you don't need right now, what's important to you and what's not. We want to make sure that you truly get a return on your investment as a member of the CCA Alliance, and that we understand what's most important to you in real time. And so we want to know how we are well positioned to help you do the work. And as I think about that, I have to share a couple of slides with you that I think will help position your understanding of where we are now versus where we have been and where we will continue to go. Next slide, please. So CCA has always focused on policy. You've known us for our policy and our advocacy campaigns around the game changers, around strategies that work, and the conditions for change. And in the past, the strategies have been focused really on the game changers, right? So we want to make sure we set the conditions. We've come into your state sometimes and helped to move policy initiatives forward. And sometimes we've done that with a little bit of a heavy hand, and we've refined the way we do that as well. I'll talk a little bit about that, but this has been our overall approach. But I would say that where the approach gets refined, I'll talk about that under each of these buckets. So for policy, we're building a movement. We've been focused on building a movement focused on student success. And so, of course, we have the Alliance. We move policy and advocacy through the Alliance and in partnership with the Alliance, we've provided reports and provided data to help you sort of reflectively look at your own college completion goals for your state. But we said, well, okay, we help with the policy, but what are the conditions that need to be met for that policy to be welcomed? And so that's the second pillar of our work. And so we've come into your states and we provided workshops, we've done coaching and support, we've done events, we've done convenings, we've done them at the, of course, the national level, the regional level, and then sometimes even at the state level. But then we heard back from you that now that you've had the policy agenda set, you've had some changes that have happened there. You even had some conditions that happened to help you facilitate this, but you didn't really know how to implement these strategies on the ground. And so that's the third pillar of where I would say the approach has been refined. And we could talk more there. So we've partnered to change the institutional culture, and now we're helping to actually transform the student experience. And so now we're really focusing with you to conduct needs assessments around what do you need to really effectuate the change that we've been discussing? What policies are needed at the state level to effectuate that change? And then how do we help you strategically plan in order to actually implement the strategies that we're talking about? And then what strategies are in our toolkit to help us to do that? And so we can move forward. If we look at the whole of the policy, the conditions, and the strategies, I would say really, again, as you can see, not much has changed except for we're really doubling down on how to help you implement the strategies on the ground. And that's really the only thing that is newish, if I would say anything, but I would also say it is also doing so with an equity lens and an equity approach to make sure we're really going to where the need is most. In the past, we would partner with states or with institutions that were just, they contacted us and said they needed help, but now we're saying, great, now let's go where the need is. Let's dig a level deeper. So I would say our conversation is really about going deeper into the conversation about who needs the help within your institutions and how do we help you get to the completion goals that you'd like to get to by looking at who needs the help the most. Next slide, please. So we've asked this question, what is our role in this college completion movement, past, present, and future? And as you can see, we are still uniquely poised to lead this, movement. We want you to be there with us. We want to make sure, though, that we're keenly tuned into what you need now, especially because things have changed so much. And I would say that as we're talking about CCA 2.0, do not fear. We are still focused on our strategies. We're doubling down on many of them. We've heard from some of our partners that, we need, guided pathways more than ever, or we need co-requisite support more than ever. So we're actually hearing from folks that we need to really have more of an intentional doubling down on some of our strategies. And we certainly will do that, but we're doing that with an eye towards equity. We're doing that in a way that we can actually help you to implement strategies and tailor and customize them to your state or to your institution. So we don't have a cookie cutter approach. What we really do is around customization. And we're having conversations about how we assist state systems and institutions that want to do something different, but don't know how. And with that said, I'll turn it over, please, to my colleague, Dr. Janifu Elston.
Thank you, Yolanda, and welcome to everyone. I will admit that this seems a little weird. Normally we are in a location together, and I'm looking at all the faces, really quick across the screen, and so I think about all the the conversations that I'll have with colleagues at the bar at the end of an annual convening, or I see Loretta, and we always give each other a nice, embrace, and she always asks how my children are doing. So I first just want to start by saying thank you very much for all the work that you continue to do. I don't think that we say thank you enough for the contributions, especially in the midst of this unique time period that we're in, specifically around the pandemic. And I'd be remiss if I just didn't just kind of honor the fact that many, I've heard from some of you and from many of our colleagues and family members where they've lost loved ones to COVID-19, and you still show up and you still do the work. And that is extremely important because it places this college completion movement as a critical component of what we're going to need to do to ensure that we have a robust recovery in this country. So my continued thoughts, wishes, blessings to you and your families. We've been off the road for a while now. You know, it's been, you know, kind of odd not having been on an airplane since the end of February. But, you know, in light of the craziness that's going on in the world, I will admit that, you know, it's been good to be able to be at home with my children and spend a little bit of more time with them. You know, I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. Some of you guys know that. So I'm feeling real good right now. You know, the Lakers just won a championship and the Dodgers are one game away from winning the World Series. So I'm flying real high right now. But even with that, nothing was more exciting than getting a chance to talk to you about some of our new thinking that Yolanda mentioned a little earlier. You know, I think that, you know, I've been at CCA for 6 years, and now, you know, in my role as Senior Vice President and Chief of Staff, now I spend a lot of time reflecting on these meetings that we've had, these visits to campuses, these academies and summits, and all the things that we've done. And one of the things that continues to come to mind is that the pandemic has probably reinforced the fact that many of the CCA strategies need to be accelerated more than ever. The things that we've been talking about, many of them have kind of been, okay, maybe I'll do this strategy, maybe I won't do that strategy. And now we're realizing all those different things are a part of one larger comprehensive whole that needs to happen. I'll also share that as, you know, I've reflected about, you know, states and what's going on in this larger movement and the momentum of the Alliance, there are still too many institutions that have not even started to scratch the surface of many of the strategies that we've been amplifying for the past decade. And I think that gives us an opportunity. This moment gives us an opportunity to figure out whether, you know, this dream that we have of college completion, you know, is it something that we're going to find or is it something that we're going to create? And I believe the terminology around impatient reformers is around a group of individuals who believe we can create what it is that we seek to have in this country. And so I get a chance over the next couple of minutes just to talk to you about our evolution when it comes to the game changers. And I know that some of you read the blog post and saw some of the outreach messages via social media. You know, what is this going to mean for the game changers? Are we still using the game changers? And I want to talk to you a little bit about that. But before I do that, I want to take you on a little bit of a journey because for some of you, you've been an Alliance team member for, you know, maybe a year or two. For some of you, you've been part of this movement since, you know, 2009, 2010 when we first began. So let's talk a little bit about the game changers and how those conversations have affected our thinking around strategy. All right, so what you see in front of you is this kind of hodgepodge of ideas over a particular timeline. So many of you remember that in 2013, we released, you know, the publication, The Game Changers, and we kind of highlighted the things that we thought were a couple of key structural components that would be important for college completion. And, you know, we were behind the work around performance funding and, you know, and although we realized that performance funding has not completely closed the gap for many of our most vulnerable students, it was an important moment in getting everyone just to not think about enrollment, but to think about college completion. But in 2013, these were the game changers. You know, performance funding, you know, we were at that time calling it co-requisite remediation. 15 to finish didn't even exist at that point. We were calling it time and intensity. And we were at the forefront of amplifying guided pathways. So we were highlighting the learnings and the understanding that guided pathways included a lot of different things. You know, I think now if you ask any individual on a campus, are you doing guided pathways? They'll say yes. And then if you ask them, what exactly are you doing? Everybody says something completely different. So it's great that we've gotten the field moving on this larger effort. At the same time, it is clear to us that there needs to be a little bit more clarity around what we mean related to these various strategies. You know, and even as we move into 2017, things like structured schedules, you know, I wanted to focus on that because now everyone realizes in this pandemic environment and with more adult learners returning to our campuses, we need to have some schedules that make sense for their lives and the predictability that they need. And so this is just designed to kind of show you how these different things have evolved. Sometimes people are like, well, are the game changers changing? Well, we've been actually evolving and changing our language and our vernacular for a number of years. And so now we're in a space where, we're adding things around career alignment and purpose first. And some of you have started to weave these together, and we call them momentum pathways. I think that all of these different language and approaches, without really providing that clarity that CCA is known for, has honestly confused some folks. And so we've been spending some time thinking about what would be some key strategic pillars that highlight the student experience. Even when you think now, and I'll go ahead and pivot, about the things, so those of you that are doing pathways, whether you're a community college or a four-year institution, even if you follow the larger effort that is done by the Pathways Collaborative that was rolled out by AACC, the American Association of Community Colleges, we talked about helping students choose a path, start a path, stay on that path, graduate, and then ensure that students are learning. For us, what we've been thinking about as we kind of bracket and bucket all these strategies is that they really fall into four key categories, and we're calling them four key pillars. Those pillars being purpose, momentum, structure, and support. And the reason why we focused on these were for a few different reasons. One is that the field continues to evolve. And so individuals will say, well, I'm doing the game changers, but what does this mean for students if I'm working on basic needs? Or I understand guided pathways includes all of this, but I'm also trying to evolve our academic maps. And how do I help students choose the right major? And so we've been thinking about it within this larger structure. And I want to be able to show you right now kind of what we tended to focus on, which was how do we ensure that the game changers are still direct, are still coordinated, but provide for that level of adaptability, but then also focus on the thing that Yolanda was talking about, which is how do we ensure that justice and structures are a part of that work to ensure equitable outcomes. And this is what we've landed on. And so what you will see right now are those core pillars that I mentioned. And so it's a bigger toolbox, but they're still game-changing strategies. And so if you ever wondered, well, what does this mean for the game changers? They are still there. They're still woven into all of this work that we're doing. And so as you look at the things that might be a little bit more bold, you'll see that, career exploration and purpose first and co-requisite support, all those things are still there, but we've started to align them around areas that allow for customization by institutions, because some institutions are saying we're doing guided pathways, some institutions are saying we're doing this strategy, that strategy, but largely they're thinking about what is the big thing that I need for my students right now. So am I focusing on structures? Am I focusing on how we get them through as quickly as possible? Am I thinking about the selections that they make through this process? And then how do I keep some guardrails in that process? And so this is kind of our new iteration of how we will be talking about the game changers, talking about our strategies broadly, and these core pillars. I would just kind of hone in on a couple things. Many of these things you're familiar with. Credit for competency has been a part of our adult learner strategy. Multiple measures was kind of part of the co-requisite support conversation. Even 15 to finish, we found that those of you who've been here for a while, we know that what that means. We know it's about 30 credit hours in a year. People are asking, what does this mean for part-time students? And so just making sure that we make some slight nuance to the language where it's about reducing their time to degree. And then, of course, proactive advising and all the things that you're familiar with, they're all there. When you see under structure, smart schedules, that's the idea of structured scheduling. How do we make it more ideal for the students in mind? And so this is how you will hear CCA talking about the work as we continue to evolve and move forward. I think the big thing for us, and if you just look at this example of career exploration or purpose-driven strategies, equity is in the details. And so when Yolanda talks about the 2.0, the 2.0 is like, okay, you've done this, because you ask everyone, have you done the game changers? Everyone says yes. And then you ask them, well, are you closing gaps? And everyone gets real silent. And so we're asking specific questions about culture, and what's happening, who's being served, who's not being served. And this is just an example around career exploration. The types of things that you would have to go a layer deeper to start finding out where there might need to be some modifications or some intentional focus in that process. And so for us, we think the benefits of this, of these pillars, it gives us a lot of flexibility. It helps us define the completion agenda broadly. It helps us focus on our strategic planning, which is our strength, because when we go to a campus, people want to know, this is what my campus needs. And the game changer language was good, but what about this thing or that thing? And where do we weave it in? And so it allows us to evolve and add new strategies as things emerge. And it places equity at the center of everything that we do. And so if you wanted to put that conversation that Yolanda had and couple it with this conversation and these notes that I'm sharing with you, it looks like this. If people were to ask, what is CCA? How do you do your work? What's the secret sauce? This is it, visually. We still are focused on policy, conditions, and strategies. And we do that through our alliance, and the goal is college completion. We don't get there without placing equity at the center and ensuring that our voice, our megaphone, the data that we have, the research, all is used to move toward that college completion goal. And I think for us, the larger social impact is ensuring more social mobility, making sure that we have more economic opportunity in this country, and ensuring that racial justice is at the forefront of our efforts. And so we're excited to continue to talk to you about this, to move in this direction. And I think the only way we get to this is through partnering and to making sure that our alliance members help us think about what's next, that they are at the forefront of moving these efforts forward. And so I'm going to turn the floor over to my colleague, Tamara Nash. We're going to talk a little bit about this connection with the alliance and the strategies that I just mentioned. Tamara, you have the floor.
Thank you, Danifu. Good afternoon. My name is Tamara Nash, and I'm the Vice President for Development and Strategic Partnerships. I joined the team in January. I've had a long career in college and university administration and 10 years at a corporate foundation. Danifu shared our refined model and how we have been working to advance the national completion agenda. Next slide, please, Danifu. We have achieved success as a result of the partnerships we have had with many of our alliance members. Over the last 11 years, we worked together to shape the agenda to transform how states, systems, and institutions are addressing the needs of our students. These are a few projects listed here that we have championed over the past several years. CCA led the Guided Pathways Initiative and partnered early with Georgia, Tennessee, and Indiana to develop national models for guided pathways. The shift from remedial education to co-requisite support was one of the early movements of CCA, when CCA championed work with 12 alliance members to shift the way we position students for college success. There are 15 to finish, sometimes known as Finish in 4, Stay on Track, projects across the country, reminding students that they need to create a plan. Next slide, please, Danifu. Next slide, please. Thank you. Everyone likes to be involved with and connected to proven product. Success begets resources. Another way that CCA wants to work with you to assist with identifying funding opportunities to elevate and scale the work that you have done. Recently, we collaborated with Alliance members to draft proposals for funders and served as references for Alliance members who are seeking to expand their work. Now, we want to identify potential partners to work with us on our new strategic pillars. We want to work in partnership with you. So if you have ideas, we want to hear them. If you're implementing new projects, we want to know. If you're working to advance a new policy, please share it with us. Together, We will use our successes to continue to advance our work. My role at CCA is to continue to build and enhance our partnerships and to identify resources that will assist us with our work together. I look forward to working with you. Thank you. And now I will pass the baton to my colleague, Charles Ansel. Charles?
Thank you, Tamara. So like Tamara, I'm actually a recent addition to Complete College America. I'm the Vice President for Research Policy and Advocacy. And 3 weeks ago, I was the Chief Operating Officer for the Community College System of New Hampshire. And prior to that, 5 years ago, I led student success efforts at the City Colleges of Chicago. So even though I'm new to the CCA team, I have to say that I'm very thrilled to have just joined Complete College America on the team, because in both Chicago and New Hampshire, we had adopted CCA strategies, which for us directly led to dramatic increases in retention rates, in graduation rates, and in post-completion success. It directly led to more students graduating, to more people having more education and more earnings power. So like you, I've always tried to live the student success mission in my work, and equity gaps in attainment have always infuriated me. And I'm confident that working with all of you is the best way that I know that I can make a difference in higher education, which is the cornerstone for rebuilding our economy in a way that benefits those who otherwise may have had fewer opportunities. And I know from New Hampshire and Chicago and so many examples across the country, as enrollment is hurting across the country, as state budget cuts are already here or on the block, I just want to reiterate what Danifu said earlier. I have 100% confidence that tackling student completion through CCA's reforms is the only way through this and the only way to be better post-pandemic. So I view it as my job to be a service provider to you and to make sure that during COVID-19, that we're providing the data and policy levers and supports that help you help students. And so right now, in this brief amount of time that I've got, I want to focus on data. So Danifu, if you can go maybe actually 2 slides. Perfect, thank you. So, CCA is clear, we've always prided ourselves on data to explain problems in student success and to overcome them. And as you can see on this slide, it was data on credits to degree a decade ago that led to national reforms on academic pathways, and moving on to various developmental education and credit accumulation measures to uncover where students may fall off and to develop solutions to prevent that from happening, to help those who may have fallen off get re-engaged with college. So now we're working with the National Student Clearinghouse on the Post-Secondary Data Partnership, or the PDP. And I can't really possibly explain how important this topic is to me, how close it is to me in 2 minutes right now. So quick plug, please sign up for the session on Wednesday, Better Data, Better Decisions, to learn more. But the bottom line, from my experience more than anything, when you solve your data problems, you start winning. It's how you'll ever know if you are winning on behalf of students. It's how you can get to what Tamara just said about success begetting more resources. You can't quantify what you value, but once you put a stake in the ground around student success, you need to be able to have immediate insight into all data points that matter to know what works. So if we go to the next slide. So states, colleges, universities have many great practices that they work on and that they share with each other and that they share at conferences. But with COVID-19, this becomes more difficult, obviously, as everyone is busier and travel is severely curtailed. But being able to compare how we're all doing and being able to see what works is paramount. And so having the ability to quickly benchmark on certain metrics is critical, but obviously it can't be just the ones that the US Department of Education publishes annually via iPads, which are lagging indicators. We need to be able to benchmark on gateway completion, on credit hour accumulation, on credit completion ratio, the types of metrics and their leading indicators that accurately capture the fast changing nature of the reality right now, of the challenges that students face right now. Because again, to Danifu's point earlier, reiterating and extending the student success reform CCA has championed, that's what this moment needs more than ever. And the metrics the PDP makes obvious, whether the metrics that the PDP makes obvious will tell you whether it's working. It will tell you about your fidelity to implementation, for lack of a better way of putting it. So if we go to the next slide, here's where the PDP comes in. So up top, we've discussed that we need to always have attention to equity gaps in our work. We know that as student completion rates have increased in the last 10 years, we know that attainment gaps by race, ethnicity, and by socioeconomic background have been stubborn, to say the least. So below that, we have to make sure that policy, that our work, and that the strategic pillars close these gaps. And you have to know whether that's happening. So the PDP at the bottom is what can mirror back that reality. It provides leading indicator metrics. And most of us measure that already, but at CCA, we are using the PDP for data collection purposes. Why? Because it takes the work out of crunching all those numbers yourself. So it puts that work on NSC. It takes the work out of separate submissions to CCA, but perhaps most importantly, the reports themselves are very compelling. They allow for benchmarking between states and institutions as more come on board. And because it's NSC, it brings in transfer activity seamlessly in a way that colleges separately just couldn't do. So my last slide is just, can we go to the last slide? Oh, sorry. Talk to your colleagues, talk to me, talk to us, learn more about this. I truly believe the PDP is really transformative stuff. And also, more importantly, I need to learn from you to support you as best as possible. So as we tighten networking among the data and policy leads across the country, let's trade notes on what works and navigate these trying times together. My cell phone is in my email signature. I'll throw it in the chat. I'm just very, very excited to work with you. And now I'd like to turn it back over to Nia.
Thank you, Charles. As Charles was, we're very excited to have Charles on board as well, because as he mentioned, data is what drives us and what shapes our conversation and shapes our agendas, policy, advocacy, and practice. And we're very excited to be moving into this space where we are able to provide a different level of feedback and support to you in the states and your alliance with our alliance as it relates to data and how you can use the data to address the equity gaps that have exist. And so the next thing I just want to talk a little bit about is institutional transformation. So this is really about how do we do the work. So policy and advocacy are at the center, the core of what we do. And we as in CCA are looking to make structural changes across all systems to address these barriers that have existed. And the work happens at the institution. And so we know that, as we are working on policy and working to advocate, there's still action and activity that's happening on our campuses that are going to improve the experience of college students. And the ultimate goal is to transform the system by creating conditions that allow for students to be successful. Next slide, please. So we just want to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that we are doing, CCA is doing to partner with alliance members across the country, and also with some of our strategic partners to be able to create conditions that allow for these things to happen. So currently, like in the moment, we have 5 projects happening across the state with strong start to finish for scaling co-requisite in Georgia, Kentucky, Ohio, Oregon, and then we have a national initiative that's happening. And we have a couple of other ones that are in process. So we were, at the forefront of Coreq and advocating for to reconsider how we remediate students who are coming to college with what we have thought not really prepared. So we are still engaging in this work, and there's some questions and comments in the chat about dual enrollment and concurrent enrollment. So Dr. Brandon Protis, who's the strategy director for the West, has been working with a lot of our partners to really continue this conversation about how does dual enrollment and concurrent enrollment fit into the work that we're doing with our completion work. We have a success project that's happening now with a cohort of small private institutions. So when CCA first began, we focused a lot on systems in states and public education. And so now we've expanded some of our work, and we're working with a group of smaller institutions to talk about the specific needs that they have in small private liberal arts institutions around data and 15 to finish or staying on track, and how do they really support the efforts that they have. New England is exciting right now because we have some new things that I'll talk about in just a second that we're going to start off in New England and then spread across the state, and looking at advising the specific needs that they have in that region. COVID and the economic downturn has been particularly harsh on some of the small institutions up in that region. So how can we help build a floor and support them in the work that they're doing? NACADA has been a steadfast partner for us. So I think if you've worked in higher education for any amount of time, you know that you can't be successful if your advising doesn't work. And we have been very fortunate to have a great partnership with NACADA and Dr. Charlie Nutt. And we're working on different types of tools that will be able to be used by our partners, our alliance members, with their systems to address the different needs that you have in different types of advising structures, because we know every campus is not the same, every community is not the same, and we have to be able to be unique in how we look at things and then be able to address the specific needs of the region, of the system. And so we're very proud to continue to work with NACADA. And then lastly, a big project that we have, CCA was selected in December to be one of the 13 intermediaries for the Gates Intermediaries for Scale project. And this was it's an amazing opportunity for us. And through this, we're using the institutional transformation assessment. So we're really working with, that's a lot of Gates speak. So let me just kind of break that down a little bit. So what we're doing really with the Gates project is to be able to pilot this tool that they have to analyze how do you create the conditions and the environment where institutional leaders and community members are positioned to be able to really look at their institution and where the gaps exist, to identify resources and to move forward to create a support system that will be better for students. And this project really is going to change the way that many institutions or higher education approaches transformation nationally. And so we have our first cohort. We'll be looking for our next cohort, the next year and a half. And so with that, just being able to identify who are potential partners for any of these projects. Next slide, please. And so what we have talked about the whole time is the value of the alliance. We know at CCA that the reason why we have been able to get a lot of these things done, to move these movements, is because of the partnership that we have with our alliance teams across the nation. And so there are some things that we would like for you all to do, and there's definitely some things that we know that we should do and can do to be able to support you. So when we're looking at the teams, what our strategy directors will be doing over the course of the next couple of weeks is reaching out to our alliance teams. We'll have an assessment that we'll ask you all to complete so we can get a better sense of what it is that you need from us. How can we best support you in the work that you need to do? What are the things that your team members need in order to be able to execute the plans that you have? Because we know that you're 7 people trying to affect movement across the entire state. So what supports do you need? What kind of professional development are things that you need for us to help you to get your work done? We will be starting regional meetings. And so we separated into regions because we thought, like I mentioned earlier, that it would be a way to have shared resources and be able to really build on the strengths and also collaborate about needs in the specific regions. So in the New England region, we're having a town hall meeting, our first one in November 19th. And during that meeting, we're going to have an opportunity to engage in a very interactive exercise where we brainstorm what are the needs of that particular region. How can we best support you? And what does higher education look like in that space? Also providing technical assistance opportunities. So our strategy directors are already developing their technical assistance webinars for 2021. So that'll be rolling out pretty soon. So you'll be able to see that. So we want you all to participate. We want you all to be involved. We want to see you. And then let us know what's happening in your state, because we know that you have various policy priorities. We want to advocate for you. We have done that in the past. So we get called to, whether it's testify or write a statement of support or, be a reference when it comes to someone submitting a grant proposal. And it helps us if we know what's going on in your states and what things you need. We want to know what initiatives you have created that we could scale and share, because that's the value of the Alliance, is to be able to share and not have to recreate everything. And then we want to know who among you are leading the way, because we, when we look at the social media space and different things, we see superstars all the time because we have people who are out there and being profiled, but we know that on every campus, there's a superstar. We know that in every system, there's a superstar. And we want to know who they are so we can help elevate the work that individuals and institutions are doing across the state. And I think that that's one of the benefits that we have. We talk about the megaphone that we have, is that we have support and we have a network that allows us to share good work broadly. And we want to do that. And we need you all to help us in order to do that. And we have one partner that has done a phenomenal job of sharing what they do and then just being out there. And so if we were in person, we probably called them up to the stage. So in this virtual space, I want to highlight one partner that we've had that's just been exemplary for the last couple of years. Next slide. And it's our friends in the great state of Nevada. Where's James McCoy? I know you're on there, James. And so Nevada has been for us an amazing partner. And one of the reasons why is that they have participated in all of these things that you see here. Momentum Pathways, the Lumina Talent Hub, they're scaling Coreq. And when we had that slide earlier about success begets resources, because they have been so active and involved and really just dug in with the work that they've been doing on their own and with CCA, other things have happened. So, they have received additional funding from ECMC and then from Strong Start to Finish. And so, and one of the things I really appreciate about Nevada is when someone calls and says, we're looking for someone to do this, I know personally, I use I statements, I can call James McCoy and say to him, hey, I have this opportunity. Do you think you might be interested? Or do you think you can find some faculty who might sign up? Case in point, we have a new partnership for online instruction for faculty. And I said, James, I have a couple of spots. Do you think you might be interested? James had, I think, 95 people signed up in like 20 minutes. And so it was just kind of amazing. But it's wonderful, because when someone comes and knocks on our door at the last minute and says, we need someone who will show up and will do the work, I feel confident that I can always say Nevada. And what we're looking for is we want to be able to say that also about other states, because I know other people are doing amazing things. We just have to know that you're doing it so that we can also say, okay, you can call this state, because we know that they are poised and ready for this opportunity. And the hope for me in my role is that over the course of the next couple of months, I'll be able to develop relationships with other Alliance members in the same way that I have developed a relationship with James, and to be able to then call on you when these types of things come forward. And so the next slide, what we're going to do is we really want to have an opportunity to talk with you, to hear from you, what are some of the things that we can do as CCA to support you in your work. So I want to give you a minute to just kind of think about what are the things that when you think if we could have this, or if CCA could assist us with this, or maybe if I have this idea, what would those things be? Because us knowing what it is that you need helps us to be able to better support and advance the things that are priorities for you, and not the things necessarily that we just think are priorities.